that semi-final was pretty much decided by Chingotto winning that battle in the cross-court against Coello. Coello just didn't know what to do because Chingotto was doing everything well. His lobs were pinpoint perfect. His net play was perfect. He's one of the best players up at the net in terms of blocking other people's and other players' powerful shots.
Chingotto is playing the best paddle of his life. I'm not sure if he can play any better because I also feel like he's not just like Galan is not carrying Chingotto. Like Chingotto's pulling his weight. Like he's really contributing to the partnership.
The main thing that Paquito and Lebron have to improve is the mental side of their game. They've got to really stay focused, and because they're both so emotional, I feel that when one goes for a couple of smashes and misses it, then the other one goes, "What are you doing? Why have you done that?" And the other one tries to go for something random as well.
Lebrón wants to be hyper aggressive, and I feel like he wants to play the way he played with Galan.
We've always thought of them as Mr. Consistency pair. They're just always there. They like long matches. They don't make a lot of enforced errors. But funnily enough, Di Nenno is smashing a lot. He's going for a lot of smashes, and his smashing is being really good.
For sure, I think offense is the name of the game to really be at the top level. And let's be honest, Stupa and Di Nenno are not fighting to be number 2. They're not fighting to be number 3. They're fighting to be number 1. And welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 49, and as always, joined by my co-host Hugo. It's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons. Just got back from a long bank holiday weekend, so it was not a national holiday actually, a holiday in Madrid, Wednesday and Thursday. So I managed to get down to the beach and obviously play a bit of paddle. It didn't go as expected, to be fair, but, how many times have we spoken about it? It's so different to go from playing in Madrid, indoors, great courts, to outdoors, sun in your face, midday, any lobs, you can't see the ball. So, yeah, it wasn't the best level of paddle, but still a good experience and a good learning experience. And obviously a great week of paddle in Seville, which I can't wait to tuck into. How are you doing, Gons?
Yeah, really good, thanks. I also had my fair share of bad paddle. I played a grade 2 tournament in the UK, and let's just say it just didn't go to plan. But we'll go again. Next week I've got another tournament. But yeah, maybe we should get stuck on and talk about the real pros out here, because it was a great week of paddle nonetheless, don't you think?
100%. And actually, just a quick one before we move on. Just make your journey over here and let's start playing together, because I think we've got a winning combo and it works. So yeah, I feel like that's the way to turn around our fortunes.
Yeah, exactly. I think so as well. And yeah, obviously when I do go back to Madrid, it's always great to play with you. But yeah, maybe kicking off and talking about Seville. We just finished the Premier Padel P2 tournament, another P2 again. And it literally just finished now, because we're recording this straight after the men's final. And wow, what a week. It was incredible paddle. And I think, actually, funnily enough, we talked about last episode how the conditions were a lot better indoor and stuff, but I actually felt like this tournament, it was outdoor, but it was still an incredible level, and the final was really good. We saw some pretty decent matches. So yeah, just a little interesting thought down there. But the first thing that we wanted to discuss today was probably one of the main highlights of the whole tournament. If not the main highlight, is the fact that Coello and Tapia didn't make the final, and they lost once again to Chingotto and Galan. And this is the second time in a row that they lose to Chingotto and Galan. And previously they were taken to a third set as well. So this sort of made us think, have Chingotto and Galan found a way to beat Coello and Tapia? And Hugo, I'll let you kick off.
Yeah, it's a great question. And just for our listeners who don't know the score of the match, or I'm sure everyone does, it was 6-3, 7-5 to Galán and Chingotto. So they didn't even lose a set, which is very impressive. And, it seems like they haven't they? Right now, as you said, first tournament together for Chingotto and Galan. They made the final. They took Coello and Tapia to 3 sets. And Coello, after the game, said it's the first time in the season where we've felt where I felt we were dominated and we didn't know what to do after they'd lost that first set. And now, obviously, they lost the final last week in Brussels and they lost this week in the semis. Maybe getting into the stats a bit and my own opinion of why they have found the formula and what the formula is. I think they've done what colloquially is known as the nevera a bit, and they found the way to play against them because basically they're freezing out Tapia. So if we look at the data of this week's Sevilla P2 semi-final between Galán, Chingotto and Tapia Coello, Tapia played 39% of the balls in their partnership, whilst Coello played 61%. Now, it's not twice as much, but it almost is creeping towards twice as much of the balls being played by Coello. And yeah, basically, I have a feeling that that's the style they're playing. They're playing a lot of balls to Coello, a lot of lobs to Coello, I feel, in particular. And Coello isn't really knowing how to deal with them. And because I don't think that Coello has a great bandeja or a great víbora, probably because his smash is so good and has been so good that every time the ball is up and above his head, he goes for a smash. But given that his smash isn't being very good either, because when you look at the data, it was actually you, Gons, mentioned this to me earlier on after the semi-final. I think his smash statistics in that match was 9 out of 26, which is obviously
Terrible.
A poor turnout. And, less than half of the smashes turning out as positive shows that it's almost better for him not to go to smash. So if he can't smash and his bandeja and his víbora aren't great assets, then we can see why they're struggling. I felt that semi-final was pretty much decided by Chingotto winning that battle in the cross court against Coello. Coello just didn't know what to do because Chingotto was doing everything well. His lobs were pinpoint perfect. His net play was perfect. He's one of the best players up at the net in terms of blocking other people's and other players' powerful shots. So have they found the way? In my eyes, they have right now. My only addition and my only question around it is I feel that Chingotto and Galan right now are playing the best paddle of probably their careers right now. Galan has been doing so over the last 7 or 8 months, and Chingotto for the last probably 3 tournaments since he teamed up with Galan. I almost feel like this is their ceiling, whereas Tapia and Coello, I don't think are playing their best paddle right now, particularly Coello. So if they manage to increase that level, will Chingotto and Galan still dominate them and still beat them? I'm not too sure. What do you think, Gons?
Yeah, I think to support as well your first argument of Tapia being put in the deep freeze, I think that in Brussels as well, like Tapia played 43% of the balls, so that's still extremely low, and 39%. I was actually shocked as well when I saw that because I don't think I've ever seen such a low number by at the professional level, like being played by one player. To be honest, like it's actually normally quite close to 50-50 each, but this was like incredible to see that this is clearly a tactic that they're going down. So now they're making Coello, as you mentioned, play a lot more, and it just feels like Coello only has one way to play, which is, as you mentioned, you are going for the smash and then just going to the net and being very aggressive. He doesn't feel as comfortable going to the back. But I almost feel like that's sort of playing into Chingotto and Galan's hand, because I feel like if something that we've learned from them and as a pair is that they love the volleys, like the close court volley and that sort of fast play. Chingotto, his Chingotto's playing is literally everyone goes to lob Chingotto, obviously, because that's the way to get into the net. But then he does a pretty decent víbora. Like it is not spectacular. It won't win you the point. But then he rushes to the net so quickly. And they're so comfortable, both Galan and Chingotto, the volley. So I feel like that sort of play of Coello trying to either play a smash and as shown by the data, it's just not been very effective, certainly as of late. And then going to the net where both Galan and Chingotto are already quite comfortable. It just doesn't feel like it's sort of like it feels like they're just playing into their hand, and it's what Chingotto and Galan are looking for. And it just, for me, the ceiling point, it is an interesting one. I definitely feel like Chingotto is playing the best paddle of his life. I'm not sure if he can play any better, because I also feel like he's not just like, Galan is not carrying Chingotto. Like, Chingotto's pulling his weight. Like, he's really contributing to the partnership. He's adding a lot. He's actually winning a lot of points himself. So can he play and find another level? I'm not too sure. I think in certain matches, however, we've maybe not seen the absolute best Galan. Like, for example, in sort of the first match, when they actually lost in that first final in Porto Cabello, it didn't feel like Galan was sort of playing his best. So I don't think they've both coincided, let's say, at their absolute peaks, but I completely agree with you that Coello and Tapia haven't either. And it does feel like they can definitely go back up a level, but they sort of, I think that they just need to go back to the drawing board and understand how they can sort of mitigate this. And I think especially the area of concern for me is not getting Tapia involved. And last match, for example, we saw from the stats that Tapia wasn't necessarily good. But this match, he was actually quite good, and he played better. When he touched the ball, he was better than Coello. Like, his contribution score was higher. Um, so he was contributing more to the game than Coello, but he just didn't touch the ball a lot. So they just need to find a way to make sure that Tapia can get stuck in. And then another stat as well that sort of really surprised me was the amount of smashes. Only 9 smashes from Tapia, which is sort of surprising given that it's probably his best shot, certainly on the offensive side. So I don't know exactly what they need to do, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they'll analyze this sort of data and they'll look into it, and like I said, they'll probably do some adjustments for sure. Like, I've no doubt that they'll come back stronger, but it'll be interesting because then that'll mean that probably Ale and Chingo would also have to do some sort of adjustments. So we'll see. I can't wait for the next matchup, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed. I can't wait for their next matchup. It does seem to be, at least in my eyes, the best match to watch right now when you look at the other pairs, because I don't think the Super Pibes or Paquito and Lebron are quite at Chingotto and Galan's and Goya and Tapia's level. My other main concern, something that they really have to change, is Galan played 55% of the balls in their partnership, in his partnership with Chingotto. Now, Galan right now is probably the most informed player in the world. If they want to win, if Coello and Tapia want to win, I don't think a great strategy is having Galan play 55% of the points. Now, I understand that obviously he covers more court than Chingotto. However, Tapia usually covers more court than Coello. And Coello has been playing whatever it is, 60, 61% of the points in their partnership. So Coello and Tapia have to find the way to drift a larger volume of play to Chingotto. Whether that's, well, maybe the lobs have to be better. So lobs have to be more into Chingotto's side and more towards the right side of the court and over Chingotto's right shoulder. And personally, I didn't feel in their match, I didn't feel that Chingotto's Víbora or Bandeja was that good. And so when I was watching the quarterfinals, obviously Yanguas and Garrido played Coello and Tapia. Yanguas' Víbora is maybe the best on tour, at least one of the best. And Coello was dealing with it absolutely fine. He was volleying it down in and around the half of the court, even on his backhand and just pushing up towards the net. He really didn't struggle and he played really, really well. So I'm surprised that he wasn't managing to deal with Chingotto's Víbora in the same way. I think it was maybe a bit down to confidence, just feeling that Chingotto was doing, well, playing really good lobs, making him turn. And I feel like defensively where Coello struggles is when the Víbora of his opponent goes back wall, then side glass, he has to turn and play the lob on his backhand. He always, or he seems to leave those lobs a bit short. And obviously, if you leave a short lob against Galan, it's good night. So yeah, I just feel that I'm quite surprised that he wasn't managing to deal with Chingotto's Víbora that well, because it didn't seem to be that good. But maybe a little bit to do with confidence. It probably, given that Chingotto and Galan are probably in Coello and Tapia's heads right now, because they're the only partnership that have really challenged them this season, apart from obviously Lebrón Galan right at the start of the season when they were still together. So It's interesting. I'm really excited to watch them, and I just wanted to reiterate your point around Chingotto really pulling his weight and winning a lot of points. He had, as you said, the best contribution score in their semi-final. He generated 15 winners. 15 winners is a lot of winners for a player like Chingotto. Tapia generated 19 and Coello generated 21. So honestly, it's a lot of winners. Only 6 unforced errors. That's no surprise. It's Fede Chingotto, the king of consistency. So yeah, I can't wait to see what's to come. And I was slightly disappointed in Tapia and Coello's level because it felt like there were a lot of moments in the match where Chingotto and Galan slightly dropped their level and they didn't take advantage of it. And having watched Tapia's performance in particular in the quarterfinal against Garrido and Yanguas, where he was literally unplayable, one of the best performances I've seen this season, I was expecting a bit more.
Yeah, I think they were just both felt a bit uncomfortable, to be honest. I don't think neither of them felt comfortable throughout the match. And I think we heard that in the changeovers. There was a couple of times as well where Coello was apologizing to Tapia, telling him that he needs to do better, and I think he sort of recognized that. And yeah, I don't know if it's sort of the element of being put quote unquote in the freezer in la nevera, whereas you're not getting that rhythm of the game. You're just almost like a passenger, just watching everything and are not really participating. So then when you do get called upon, then it's hard for you to actually get into the game and get into the rhythm. So yeah, definitely need to look at that. I wonder as well, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Hugo, but do you feel like the conditions, because surprisingly enough, I almost felt like the court wasn't particularly fast. It was a bit of a mix. I felt like the smashes like actually needed to be quite decent for them to really kick up. So again, I wonder if this match is played, let's say in the summer or something like that, do you feel like still Goya and Tapia have the edge? Maybe when the conditions are a bit better for the sort of the players that smash more, essentially.
I do think that a fast court definitely favors them. We've seen how well they performed in fast courts. This is Tapia and Goya I'm talking about. So yes, I agree. However, I do think that throughout the day in Seville, when it was hot, it was quite a fast court. Like the balls were bouncing a lot and the smashes didn't have to be that good if they were kick smashes because the ball would automatically kind of bounce back up really high. We saw a lot of kick smashes from Stupa, for example, which were absolutely sensational. And obviously Tapia in the quarterfinal against Yanguas and Garrido, as I mentioned. So yeah, it was almost like an intermediate / fast court during the day. Now, if it was always fast, would that benefit Goya and Tapia? Yes. The only thing is that we saw how Chingotto was actually smashing, which was honestly incredibly surprising. And actually, we wanted to just give a shout out to Chingotto for liking our Twitter comment regarding his smashing ability because it obviously impressed everyone out there and obviously us in particular. So, but yeah, I was just going to say that Galan would obviously benefit from a fast court as well because right now his smashing is through the roof and also just so consistent and he can smash all the types of he can play all the types of smashes, you know, the fast smash, the kick smash. He's even playing the jump smash now, which to be honest, I hadn't really watched him do that jump pre-smash. And now he's doing that. So is there anything he can't do?
Yeah, I feel like that one though still needs a bit of improvement. I think a lot of the times he did get caught out, but yeah, obviously he has the ability to do it. I just feel like the timing he sort of needs to get faster to the ball to really get under it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the only thing I would say between him and Chingotto that they sort of still need to tighten up a bit is that sort of when Galan is really going to like Chingotto's side to pick up a ball, a lot of the times you feel like he's not going fast enough or Chingotto's not moving fast enough. So then Galan doesn't get there quite comfortably. But yeah, I mean, tiny details really.
Agreed. And just a last point on what I felt and just my feelings on that semi-final. There are a lot of moments where actually Galan maybe played a smash, left it short, and Goya counterattacked, and Tapia and Goya won the point, and maybe it was advantage to them, break point, or back on juice, having saved a match point or a break point, and then they play a really stupid point. There was a lot of times where One, for example, Tapia, I just remember him kind of going cross court, trying to play the ball, getting in front of Coello when he really didn't have to, probably desperate because he was frozen out, trying to play the ball. And also a lot of times when Chingotto and Galan were obviously, they were just a wall, they were getting everything back. And after maybe 4 or 5, well, great shots from Coello and Tapia that Chingotto and Galan got back, Tapia or Coello would try to go for a smack or just a smash that was a bit too hard and sent it right into the back glass or into the bottom of the net. They seemed a little bit desperate. So I think if they'd played a little bit more calm, they felt a bit nervous is basically what I'm trying to get to. And yeah, I just to reiterate, I really do think Chingotto and Galan are in their heads. So yeah, we'll see what's to come.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll step up to the challenge. I think they do love a challenge anyway. So yeah, it will be, as you say, we'll see what's to come. And then maybe moving on, I think another sort of very important point in sort of the Seville tournament was, again, Paquito and Lebron. It's sort of, I guess, there's one positive, I guess there's like a positive way to look at it. There's maybe a negative way to look at it. I think maybe starting with a positive, let's be happy out here. The positive is obviously that they were better. They sort of they made the semifinals. They got to 3 sets with Los Super Pibes, so incredibly tough match. And it did feel like, playing wise, it felt like they played a bit better. Now, I guess on the negative side is maybe the expectations were that they could definitely win that match against the Super Pibes and make their first final. I think there's an element as well when we're talking about Paquito and Lebron as well, which is subconsciously, I feel like we're comparing them to Chingotto and Galan just because of the split. So obviously, Chingotto and Galan are playing so well that we're sort of like pulling down Paquito and Lebron because they aren't achieving those results. So I guess the question is, do you think, or what's going on with Paquito and Lebron, and what do they need to do?
Yeah, another great topic, Gons. I mean, firstly, it was a really good match, a really good semi-final between the Super Pibes and Paquito and Lebron. So the first set was 7-5 to Stupa and Di Nenno. The second set was obviously, was 6-3 to Paquito and Lebron. And then the third one was 6-3 to Stupa and Di Nenno. It was a very, very tight match. Potentially the match that I most enjoyed watching because it just felt there were a lot of changes. And, Stupa and Di Nenno started 4-1 up in the first set. Paquito and Lebron managed to break back and make it 5-all. And then suddenly Stupa and Di Nenno broke back and won that first set. So the first point that I wanted to get to is that I feel that there's a lot of moments where Paquito and Lebron are playing really well, and then suddenly they completely lose concentration in the game and make 3 or 4 unforced errors and lose the game after being on a wave. Now, that's something that I don't feel Stupa and Di Nenno do, or Coello and Tapia do, or even Chingotto and Galan do. If they're playing really well, they continue that momentum. And if they then lose a game, it's not because they've committed 4 unforced errors. I remember a game really well in this third set of this Sevilla P2 semi-final, where Paquito had 3 unforced errors. And then the next point, there's a lob play to Paquito, and Lebron runs into the backhand side of the court and tries to go for a smash in front of Paquito. Now, Paquito almost hits him in the head with the bat, and they lose that game. I don't know whether it was to love or to 15, but just 4 really silly unforced errors. And so I just think mentally, they are obviously a bit nervous because there's a lot of pressure on the pair. And actually, Paquito alluded to it in an interview saying that, he's playing with Lebrón, who has been the number 1 in the world for 4 or 5 years. And he compared Lebrón to Messi, which is obviously big words, but to be honest, he could be the equivalent of a Messi or a Ronaldo in padel's modern era. So Paquito's obviously nervous. And I think Lebrón, given how competitive he is, I have a feeling that he's thinking, I need to be performing and I need to be doing as well as Galan is, because I want to demonstrate that I'm as good as Galan and I'm not losing in this split. So yeah, they felt a bit nervous. And yeah, maybe going a little bit into the statistics on the semi-final. Funnily enough, given I'd actually saying I well, I'd been saying for a couple of weeks that I felt that Paquito was the one that wasn't really pulling his weight. And I still felt that it was being that way during the first rounds of the Seville P2. But in the semi-final, Paquito was the second best player in terms of his contribution score after Stupa, who was sensational. I mean, the amount of smashes that he went for that were really, really high lobs and he won them was well, really, really impressive. But yeah, Paquito was really good. I mean, 27 winners, 10 unforced errors. That's really good statistic. Whereas Lebrón, 16 winners, 8 unforced errors. So 11 winners less than Paquito and 2 unforced errors less. Now, yeah, I felt that Lebrón started really well, but then drifted towards the end of the match. And yeah, in summary, because I know it's been a bit chaotic, there's just so much data and statistics to talk around and mention, but I think that the main thing that Paquito and Lebron have to improve is the mental side of their game. They've got to really stay focused, and because they're both so emotional, I feel that when one goes for a couple of smashes and misses it, then the other one goes, "What are you doing? Why have you done that?" And the other one tries to go for something random as well. They almost need one of them to be a bit calmer because they're two very hot heads. And when things go badly, they both get a bit lost. So that's my feeling right now. Don't know what you think, Gons.
From a paddle perspective, I've got 2 points that I sort of want to talk about. Firstly, one thing that I did enjoy a lot more is that it feels like they've sort of stopped, or at least are not using as much, the whole switching sides on serve. And I feel like this is something that we definitely talked about in the first tournament that they played together. It almost felt like they were abusing it, and they're both playing on one side for a reason. Paquito's tried playing in the right. That didn't work out. Lebron's been number one and the best player on the right for years. So now, can it happen in game situations? Of course, we've also talked about so many times how we do like the switch play in game and stuff, but that whole Lebron playing on the left, serving from the left, and then Paquito being on the right, I don't think it works as well. So I'm glad that they sort of stopped doing that, at least for now, and definitely a lot less than they had done in Brussels. I still feel like there's an element of, I don't know what their playing style is yet. And I also feel like they're not, they are trying maybe to do a sort of style that isn't necessarily suited for them. I feel like Lebron wants to be hyper aggressive, and I feel like he wants to play the way he played with Galan, which is very similar to what Galan is doing now with Chingotto, which is actually go up to the net as fast as possible, block everything and stay at the net and play that sort of fast volley game. Now, I don't feel like that's Paquito's greatest strength. I don't feel like he has the physique in terms of just that, being that explosive and that fast to get up to the court constantly and be doing that. And I feel like Paquito can definitely play out more from the back. And this is something that their coach Rodrigo Vide has talked about. And I think he highlighted it again this tournament. So it feels like there's a bit of a clash there from a playing sense. And I still feel like they need to figure that out. For me, I'd feel way more comfortable if they're sort of starting a bit more from the back, being a bit more patient. And then when they do have a good chance, going to the net. And as well, I still feel like, and this is something that when I first was talking about Paquito and Lebron, and when we compare them to Chingotto and Galan, which is, from a finishing point of view, I still feel like both of them lack a bit, like to be really at the top of the game. I still feel like they're not out and out finishers. Certainly, Paquito is still, at least from like a smashing perspective, just not at that level of Galán, Tapia. So to really beat them, to really be at that level, that's sort of what threw me off a bit at the beginning. And I still have question marks around that essentially, but potentially in a faster court, they could be a bit more, essentially they could do more damage, because both of them together would have more winners than, let's say, you would assume, at least, than Chingotto and Galan, just because Chingotto wouldn't contribute as much from that sense. So I still feel like there's like some question marks around their paddle. And from mentality point of view, completely agree with you there. I think that they 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 just disconnect at moments. And I don't necessarily actually funnily enough, the important points, they actually normally play them quite well. And Paquito had a really good contribution score on the important points. He had a positive 4.5. He was actually the only player with a positive contribution score in the match against Stupa and Di Nenno on important points. And we also talked about one of the highlights of Paquito towards this beginning of the year is that sort of score on important points. But it just almost feels like in those just random points, you can throw away like 3 unforced errors and then sort of you put yourself in a really bad situation in a game. So there's that element. And then I completely agree with the nervousness as well. And hopefully this is something that as they sort of get more accustomed to playing, it's obviously still early days. But that nervousness of really playing with a number one, it actually, or trying to live up to the expectation of being like, damn, this is my partner. Like, I really need to pull my weight. He's decided to play with me. It actually does weigh heavily. And yeah, they sort of need to figure that out as well. So in my eyes, a lot of work to do for them. And I wonder if the results are going to get in their head and not allow them to essentially do this, because I do feel like they need some time to really, one, find themselves from a paddle perspective and then adjust mentally as well.
It's a good point. I'm going to reiterate the point that I think I mentioned during our last episode and maybe the previous one. I think that they're pretty much bound to stick together for the time being, just because it doesn't look like any of the other top pairs are going to, they're going to split. Coello and Tapia definitely aren't. They're the best pair. Chingotto and Galan right now are the most informed pair. And I don't have a feeling that after this week, given that they've performed well and, just generally, right, how confident the Super Pibes are in their partnership, it doesn't look like they're going to split for now, at least until the end of the season. So I just think Lebrón is the best partner available for Paquito, and Paquito is the best available partner for Lebrón. That's what I think, and to be honest, I think it's pretty obvious. So I just don't think they're gonna separate. However, I do think the results could get in their head, and that could hinder their performance and how much they can improve. Funnily enough, I was really impressed by their attitude at the end of the match. They seemed okay, as in they seemed happy with their performance. They were happy with the improvement, and they didn't feel super angry. So given that they're both so hot-headed and competitive, and we know how emotional they are, I think they were quite sane, to put it that way, and they were quite honest. So to be fair, I do genuinely think that match could have gone either way. When looking at how many points each pair won, Stupa and Di Nenno won 86. Lebrón and Paquito won 83. 3 points difference. It was really, really even. So I do genuinely think it could have gone either way. It was just a break in the third set, if I'm not mistaken. So, hey, it's moments, and it can go, as we've said a lot during our episodes, it can go either way. And funnily enough, Stupa and Di Nenno had been really unfortunate regarding key points and key moments of matches during the season, and that's probably one of the reasons why they hadn't been able to make a final. So this week they were a bit lucky, at least in my eyes, and I think that Lebrón and Paquito could have definitely won that match if a couple of points would have gone the other way. Now, I just wanted to highlight one quick thing that I thought of when I was watching Stupa and Di Nenno. We've always thought of them as Mr. Consistency pair. They're just always there. They don't, they like long matches. They don't make a lot of enforced errors. But funnily enough, Di Nenno is smashing a lot. He's going for a lot of smashes, and his smashing is being really good. And when looking at the statistics, regarding their semi-final against Paquito and Lebron, they actually had 7 more unforced errors than Paquito and Lebron. It's just that they had 10 more winners. Now, I wouldn't have thought that Stupa and Di Nenno would have 7 more unforced errors and 10 more winners than Paquito and Lebron. It just shows what we'd mentioned towards the start of the season and in some of our previous episodes, that their coaching team is really working on making Di Nenno more aggressive, and Stupa's always been aggressive, but even more, and just basically making them go for shots and being just taking more risks. And hey, we didn't think that it was paying off towards the start of the season. It was a bit of a change, and we were thinking, I think a lot of people were thinking, why are Stupa and Di Nenno changing their formula if it's got them to the number 2 spot, and they were fighting for the number 1 spot towards the end of last year? Why are they changing now? This could give them the right to continue to do it, because I think it really paid off in the semi-final, and it is probably paying off for them.
For sure. I think offense is the name of the game to really be at the top level. And let's be honest, Stupa and Di Nenno are not fighting to be number 2. They're not fighting to be number 3. They're fighting to be number 1. So to achieve number 1 at the moment in paddle, you need to be offensively, you just need to be that dominant, and you need to be able to generate winners easily. And both players historically and their characteristics as a player have never necessarily been known as these super aggressive, highly offensive weapons. And that's, if they're both paired up together, they sort of need to work on that. So I'm glad to see that it's definitely paid off for both of them. First final of the season. It was still quite a competitive match against in the final against Chingotto and Galan. They were break up in, definitely the first set. I can't remember in the second set if they were a break up as well.
I think they may have been.
Well, in the first set for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was first set tie break, just 1 break in the second set. So still really good. And actually, I feel I actually did see the stat. They also generated more winners than Chingotto and Galan, just slightly more, but evidently way more unforced errors. So yeah, it's definitely paying off, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So given that obviously we've been chatting for quite a bit of time now, and obviously we don't really want to bore our listeners, I think we should probably move on to maybe the main event, because we haven't really spoken about the final itself, which, as you just mentioned, finished not long ago, an hour and a bit ago, hour and a half ago. And for those of you who don't know, Galan did it again. They won the final. They've made it 2 tournaments in a row. They won it 7-6, 6-4, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, Gons, it would be great to get your thoughts. Maybe the question that I could potentially pose is, do you think Galan are a real threat for the number 1 spot for Coello and Tapia this season?
Yeah, I feel like, so from a points perspective, if I'm not mistaken, so it will definitely, yeah, they definitely could. Because if I'm not mistaken, Coello and Tapia have sort of 20k points, and Chingotto and Galan maybe sort of like 17 or something like that.
I think Coello and Tapia are more on something like 24k.
Oh, are they?
I think so. But anyway, obviously it'll be updated tomorrow, so it'd be great. It'd be great to have a look. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, no, you are right, because Coello is like 13k and Tapia's almost 11k. So it does feel like it's quite a bit of a difference when we're talking just like purely numbers ranking perspective, if they can achieve it. Galan definitely can achieve it. I mean, he's neck and neck with Coello, and he's currently sitting number 2 himself. But in terms of like feel of like, can they be that number 1? Can they be the best player? Can they be the best pair in the world? I certainly so. At least definitely at the moment. So 2 tournaments in a row they've won, and additionally as well, this tournament they haven't dropped a set, which is absolutely amazing. And I feel like their playing style is just suits both of them really well. I feel like Chingotto, like I said, he's the one that's really impressed me. He's sort of stepping up so much. Again, in the final, some of the stats, he's the player with the highest contribution score, more than Galan, which is incredible. He had just 3 unforced errors. Like, that is absolutely amazing. I mean, I have 3 unforced errors in just 1 game. So honestly, it is shocking.
It's not just you, mate. It's everyone.
Yeah.
The humans.
Yes. exactly. So 3 unforced errors in a whole match in a final as well. Like,
Baffling.
just absolutely ridiculous. And like I mentioned at the beginning, their playing style, just I love how they're playing and they're just being so aggressive and sort of being at the net, and they're both so fast. I think physicality for them is massive. And I don't really know how you can damage the pair at the moment, because if you lob Chingotto, he's going to do a vibora, where it's not like the most amazing. He's not going to necessarily win the point, but he's not going to miss. He won't miss. And he'll do it just good enough so that he'll buy himself time to go into the net and be really comfortable. And then if you lob Galan, then it's almost like you're just like praying for him not to smash it and miss somehow. But his smashing is just so good at the moment. We know that he's a player on tour with the highest percentage amount of winners. So it's a deadly combo. I'm not really sure how they can actually do them damage. The only sort of things that I feel like they need to work on if they really want to become that sort of number one is so I've sort of alluded to at the beginning when we talked about them and Coello and Tapia, is I still feel like there are moments where they play the sort of lob to Chingotto and Galan wants to come in and sort of smash it. And I feel like he's not fast enough, and he either can't smash it. So he sort of has to do a vibora, which is not great because he's really uncomfortable, or he does smash it, but the smash isn't great. So it's quite easy for then the sort of opponent to return it back and get a por cuatro. And then the last point, which is quite funny, because it reminded me of something that we talked about with Vianney when we sort of asked him about who does he think that's going to be better, Paquito Lebron or Chingotto and Galan. And one of the things he said about Galan was this whole that he feels like Galan has to show off sometimes and sort of do these sort of trick shots. And funnily enough, at the beginning of the first set, when Stupa and Di Nenno got the break, there were a couple of points where Galan just completely missed it because he tried to do some, play around the back or like some like molinete kind of like shot, which he normally does happen. But that sort of playing style, if he's sort of focusing on that rather than playing actual winning paddle, then yeah, that could obviously cause a concern. But I definitely trust that it's not going to be recurring as such, and it's just moments. And he's shown obviously that he's been number one for years and arguably the best player in the last couple in the last months. So yeah, they definitely feel like at the moment they do have everything to be that number one pair. But it will be interesting to see as well when we head into the summer how Chingotto adjusts for those really fast courts. That's the only sort of question that I have, because it does feel like there are other pairs with more firepower. And I feel like these last two tournaments have benefited more Chingotto and Galan, to be honest.
I 100% agree with that. Going back to the points perspective, I do think there's a bit of a gap in points. So though obviously Chingotto and Galan are very much closing that gap between them and Coello and Tapia very quickly. But it is true that the two tournaments that they won this last couple of weeks are P2s. Now, I think the really key thing regarding the race for the number one spot is how they perform in the majors and even the P1s, because obviously they're worth a lot of points. And I think if they don't win a major, if they don't win the next major, or if Coello and Tapia win the next major, it really starts to kind of push the balance in their favor. Now, as I said at the beginning of the season, I do think that Coello and Tapia are going to end the season as the number one ranked pair. However, the fact that Chingotto and Galan are definitely in their heads and really they've got the upper hand against them could really punish them. And well, I think a key thing could also be whether Chingotto and Galan fall on their side of the draw, because well, now, if I'm not mistaken, Chingotto and Galan will be the second ranked pair, right? Because it was very tight between them, Paquito and Lebron, and Stupa and Di Nenno. So if they've won the last two tournaments and made the final in Venezuela, they should be the second ranked pair. So that will mean that they only meet Coello and Tapia in the final, which I think actually benefits Coello and Tapia because they don't have to see them until the semis. So yeah, from a points perspective, I think it's going to be hard, but definitely doable. Now, I totally agree. I think it's going to come down to whether Chingotto and Galan, whether they can still perform in the very fast courts during the summer, particularly, sorry, if Tapia and Coello get back to their best, particularly Coello, and regarding his smashing, because right now it's been really inconsistent. And to be honest, at least in my eyes, quite poor for who Coello is. But if he turns that around, we've seen how hard it is to play against Coello and Tapia on the fast courts. So that's a good question. But honestly, I'm actually really surprised that Chingotto and Galan are doing so well so quickly. We had our debate regarding who we thought was going to do better between them and Paquito and Lebron, and I think you're winning that one. But I really wasn't expecting Chingotto to reach the level that he's playing at right now. He's just I didn't expect that he could play at that level for so many matches, and particularly during the key moments, which is what he's struggled with traditionally. So yeah, and regarding that point about Galan showing off, I think he's probably entitled to do it because it pays off about 90% of the times. I think one other key element and point, if they want to continue to win matches and challenge for that number one spot, is I actually think that they haven't played the key points that well against Coello and Tapia in particular, because they were dominating the final last week in Brussels, and actually Coello and Tapia turned it around and saved 5 match points and took the game to a third set. So, and actually this week, even when they were winning that second set, Coello and Tapia turned it around, if I'm not mistaken, and they had a chance to win that second set. I just felt that in those key points, Galan was going for a smash too early. Maybe Chingotto was taking a bit too much of a risk. It was actually more Galan than Chingotto, to be fair. So I do think that they have to keep a bit more calm in those situations to really, because I genuinely think that if they would have kept a bit more calm and their decision would have been a bit better during those key points, they would have won both the final in Brussels and, well, actually they did win this week's semi-final 2-0, but they would have won the final in Brussels 2-0 as well, because they dominated Coello and Tapia. So yeah, I think it's a little bit to do with their mentality, whether they can play those key points as well as Coello and Tapia do, for example, because I think that's one of their strong points, and also whether they can sustain the level that they're playing at the moment, because Galan's level at the moment is just through the roof, and he's been doing it for 7 or 8 months. Fantastic, great, unplayable. Now we saw how Coello and Tapia did that last season for 6-7 months, and then they suddenly dropped. So will Galan drop? I could see it happen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Actually, someone that sort of said this was Seba Nerone. I think he had an interview with 2010, now part of Mejora Tu Padel and Manu Martin's sort of YouTube channel. And he mentioned that he feels like the sort of top 4, because it's now really like a big 4 essentially, they all will all have their up and downs, and they all have their moments in the season. And I guess it's when you have your good moment, can you sort of take opportunity of it? Can you make as many points as possible? And when you're having your down moment, can you stay as close as possible and not essentially drop too far off? So it definitely feels like at the moment, Chingotto and Galan are having like their really good moment. And I don't disagree. Can they sustain it throughout a whole year? I'm sure as well, physically, it's not easy. So we'll see, because last year, as you mentioned, Coello and Tapia had that massive sort of, that beginning was incredible. They were unplayable, untouchable. Then niggles here and there, they started to drop off. Los Super Pibes then all of a sudden seemed unplayable towards the summer. Then Lebrón and Galan, when Lebrón finally got back, they sort of ended the year much better. So I do feel there's an element of that. I feel definitely those top 4, they all have the sort of paddle to be number one, and there will be moments in the season where one will be better than the other. It's just that, like, how much better is one going to be and how much worse is the other going to be? That's really going to make the difference.
Exactly. Can they capitalize on their momentum and their most informed tournaments and well, moments throughout the season, and also can they coincide with the majors and the P1s, which are obviously worth the most points? So
yeah. No, that's a really good point, because you'd argue right now, like incredible. Chingotto and Galan won 2 tournaments, 3 finals, but they're only 500. So it's as if they won one P1. And now, if I'm not mistaken, the next tournament is again another P2. But then all of a sudden, you've got a couple of P1s. So I guess in a way, I wonder if they do think like, I mean, amazing. It's the start of the pair and Chingotto as well. Incredible to like win again and sort of his first couple of tournaments as a pro player. But yeah, in a way, it's like, are they peaking too early to really capitalize and grab those points?
We've seen how dangerous peaking too early is in sport. We've seen it in football, for example, when a football team peaks too early and peaks in like December, and suddenly when it comes to the key moments for like the Champions League, for example, it's March and players are not knackered or injured. So yeah, it's dangerous, but very, very excited for what's to come, because yeah, I think there's going to be a hell of a race in our hands, probably across the four main pairs that we've discussed. But yeah, Gonz, I don't know what you think, but our listeners are probably bored of hearing our voices.
Yeah, I think this probably brings us to the end of the episode. And maybe just one last thing before we end. I do want to give a massive shout out to sort of fans, I guess, or sort of users that have like give us some really positive comments and feedback. Like, we genuinely really appreciated any feedback. Is always super welcome, because we're trying to give give the give the best product to our sort of audience. And really, so I really appreciate the comments from Kevin Villa and Jeremy Eriksson. Hopefully I didn't completely ruin that. But yeah, I really appreciate it. And for anyone else, like, feel free to drop us a comment and leave your thoughts, and if you have any suggestions, because at the end of the day, we love talking about paddle, but we also want to make this like really inclusive, and we really appreciate all the feedback for you guys to keep on listening and following us. So yeah, just wanted to mention that really quick.
100%. It's all about you guys, our listeners, our followers. So very excited that, well, so many people are interacting and watching us. And yeah, the more feedback, the better. And even if it's negative, the negative feedback and constructive feedback is really important, because obviously it makes us better and helps us improve.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. As long as it's worded in a in a respectful way, but 100% constructive criticism is probably the best sort of type of criticism, so we can improve. But yeah, Hugo, I really enjoy that. It's been a pleasure as always talking to you about paddle. Unfortunately, next week we have a break, probably good for the players, but then we're going into the South American tour, so that'll be really exciting.
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait for the tour. Hopefully a bit of a mixture of courts, fast courts, slow courts, just, well, mainly so that Coello and Tapia actually manage to turn it around against Chingalan, because I'm nervous. But yeah, cheers guys. Have a great week, and thank you very much for watching once again.